Welcome to another episode of The Unconditional Life. I'm Johnny.
I'm John.
Thanks for joining us. Today, John, I'm going to talk about something that's probably going to be a little bit... people are going to have a lot of different opinions about this.
Oh, of course.
I think so.
Of course they are.
Just because it's such a delicate thing. And before I get into this, I just want to preface this by saying me and John do not have all the answers. No way, shape, or form. We are just like everybody else. We are trying things, seeing if it works, trying just to do the best that we can in every aspect of our lives, really. But
that's why we're having this conversation, because we don't know.
Exactly.
We have some things we think and some ideas we feel, and that's why we're here to explore how we feel and what we think.
Yep, you just got to understand that you're just party to us having a conversation that we normally would have just outside of a camera, in front of a camera. So today, John, I want to talk about parenting. This is a tough time to be a parent. It really is.
So.
There's a lot going on. Okay, there is a lot more you have to worry about as a parent today than I think you did a long time ago. For instance, when I was growing up as a kid. Not that it's more, but it's very different. You know, when I was growing up as a kid, you didn't have to worry about things like the internet. You know, the impressions that you were getting there.
Absolutely.
You didn't have to worry about certain things being covered or not covered in school. You didn't necessarily have to worry about where your kids go when they run out in the yard and go play. I used to disappear all day long as a kid. And if anybody asked my mom, "Where's your kid at?" "Oh, he's out in the woods playing."
He'll come home when he gets hungry.
He'll be home when he's hungry.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, things are just different. And it's not necessarily good or bad, but I think we face a lot more challenges today that are unique and different to what my parents faced raising me and my brothers and sisters.
Yeah, my one big rule growing up was you come in when the streetlights come on.
Yeah, pretty much.
That was pretty much the edge of my boundary. And then it was check in and go play night game.
Yeah.
So we definitely are in a different landscape than we were growing up.
Yep, absolutely we are. And so with that, basically we just want to talk about how to bring this concept of being an unconditional self, loving yourself unconditionally, and trying to be unconditional about the other areas in our life, how that fits into being a parent or an unconditional parent. And again, I don't have all the answers, but John, from my experience, and I've tried a lot of different things. I've got 2 kids, both right around teenage years, and it's definitely challenging. The issues that we face at home are not the same issues I thought I'd be facing as a parent from when I was a kid.
Of course.
One of the big things it's come in to play in our family is it's really tough for at least one of my kids right now to really hold on to who they are or to know who they are. And it's because they're being told so many different things from so many different directions by so many different people about what the template for their life should look like. And they're getting that template from the world. And for most kids, they're also getting a different template from their parent about, no, it's this. This is how I would like you to be. And meanwhile, the kids nowadays are just trying to look around and trying to figure out, with all these templates out there, how to really find a way to be authentic. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles we run into trying to parent our children right now is how do we keep them safe and allow them to be authentic still?
See, I think that's a missing ingredient in parenting in general. I believe, and I know this is going to rattle some cages, and maybe that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Is I believe that, and this is just an observation. I go to lots of homes, I meet lots of people. And I've seen a lot of a push in life for some kind of compensation for the mistakes that we made through our own children. And you can't fix your life by making your kids be, do, have, learn anything. I truly believe, and this is, I have had a blessing in my life. My wife and I got married later in life, and she brought her kids to our marriage, and I brought my kids, and then we had one of ours. The neat part about that is ours came quite a bit later. So Aiden, our youngest, is very much younger than the other kids. And I noticed, as I have evolved, that I see some breakdowns in parenting, and I saw what I felt like was me over controlling my kids. And I noticed that I went back to my childhood. I had a conversation actually with a good friend of mine right before my last child was born, Aiden was born, and he said, actually, parenting is pretty easy. Just remember the things you didn't get when you were parented, and be that for your kid. And I realized a little bit later in Aiden's life that I was butting heads with him a lot about him just making choices. And so I had this epiphany one day. I was praying and I had this epiphany. And some people will argue, but God spoke to me. However that works for you guys, wrap it around your head. But I had some inspiration. And God told me to quit controlling my child. That I had given this child everything that he needed to be a successful human being. And that my job now was to keep him alive and fed so that he could make enough mistakes to figure out who he was and be a successful human being. And at first that's really scary to me because I'm like, but what if I don't teach him all the right? Well, the best way we teach our kids right is by how we are.
Yeah.
So I can speak till I'm blue in the face about all the things I want my children to do. And most of us aren't necessarily real good at doing exactly the things we tell our kids.
Right. We're not the best shining example.
We're not always the best
of what
monkey
we're
see,
trying to
monkey
get.
do, even
Yeah.
though we got good intentions.
Yeah.
And so I realized the best thing I could do was to sharpen my saw, clean up my house, and make sure that Dad was taking care of business in his arenas so that my child, as I gave him the space to make choices, would start to make choices based on the things I was doing, not the things I was saying.
Yeah.
And at first, when I went to my wife, at first it was very trepidatious. We approached this literally a hands-off parenting style. We have a curfew and very few rules. Be kind, help her. There are very few rules. Tell the truth, be loving, be kind, pitch in around the house. So we don't have big lists of things. And all of a sudden the temperature in our family changed. And this child who was pushing and resisting everything from me was now starting to share with me and tell me and talk to me about some stuff that I didn't necessarily want to hear. But guess what, folks? It was the same stuff I was doing to my mom and dad. Only difference is I know what my kid's doing. I don't love it when he comes home and says, "Hey, I was at this party and we just drank a beer or we smoked some grass or whatever we did." But at least I know I'm not going to get a call. I remember growing up, friends of mine whose parents would get a call, "Your kid's in the ER, overdosed. Your kid's is alcohol poisoned." That's not going to happen to me because, first of all, I'd be really surprised if my kid goes there because I've given him the space to be a little bit exploratory and discover for himself instead of a lot of the mistakes that I made when I was young was because I felt over controlled.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up mistakes specifically because most of the parenting styles you see around, and not that it's right or wrong, but it's just true, comes from the fear of the mistake.
Yes.
Comes from the fear, I don't want him to go through what I went through, which I get that, or I don't want him to go through this experience, or I see this happening, I'm not saying that's a bad spot to parent from. I'm just saying that, look, when I was a kid, the more mistakes I made, the more I evolved and learned.
The faster.
That's how life works. Life doesn't work by knowing how to avoid all the spots. No, life works because you get beat up and polished. You know how you make a rock polished and beautiful?
Yeah,
you tumble it and beat the crap out of it for days.
Yep.
And I'm not saying don't get me wrong. I'm not saying let's do that to our kids. No,
or even to yourselves.
Or you know what? Maybe no.
But the point there I think you're making is life will tumble you.
Yes. And if you don't allow that rock to tumble, if you try to hold it in the middle of the tumbling, the rock's just going to be the same rock it always has.
Polished on one side.
Yeah. And you need to be able to allow that kid, your children to make mistakes. That creates who they are. How are they going to know what they have if they never get tested or challenged by anything? How are they going to know what's in here if they don't have any demons to go up against? You can't take them all away. You have to let them go through it.
And just so that you guys don't think we're crazy, we're not advocating birthing a child and putting it on the floor and ignoring it and throwing food at it.
I was. I don't know what you're
Well, maybe he is.
I'm kidding.
Well, what we're talking about is being the life support system and the example of the kind of life that you're hoping your children would start to live. And part of that for me is, we talked about this on the way here today. Like, we're all just trying to find happiness, right? Success, whatever that thing is that we're here for. And I would pose to you that there's, just like we have 8 billion perceptions, there's 8 billion versions of happiness. Even those of us that subscribe to allegedly all the same belief system. And when was the last time? One of my favorite movies is The Notebook. I'm an old chick flick dude. I'm
You are a
funny.
chick
I like
flick
to
guy.
I like
But
to
that's a
cry
good
and
movie,
feel
though.
stuff. But I love the part where he chases her around. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do, and he says, "What do you want? What do you want?" She, "Well, my mom and my fiance." And he said, "No, screw that. What do you want?" When was the last time any of us actually sat down with a piece of paper and said, "What is happiness to me?"
Yeah.
Not what does the world say. I need a sports car. I need $1 million. I need a beach house. What is happiness to me? My younger brother said to me one time, and I love it, it was beautiful. He said, "I don't want a mansion in heaven, John. It's too much to take care of. I'd rather have a grass hut right next to the beach with a bong in the corner and a barbecue out front so I could go catch fish and have a smoke and just hang out by the beach. That's what I want for an eternal reward." And I thought, man, what a horrible thing to give that guy a mansion. And so it just made me realize, when was the last time, and really try it, boys and girls, and I'm talking to all you grown-ups out there. Go back to when you were a child and write a list of stuff that makes you happy and ask yourself, when was the last time you went down that list of stuff? Yeah. When was the last time you rode a bike? I went skinny dipping with a group of friends. Did something crazy that...
Yeah.
I'm not talking about hurting anybody. I'm talking about the impulsiveness of spontaneity and having fun and learning and growing and allowing your children that. I see so many children over-controlled to the point of... And again, this is going to be controversial, but I live in a neighborhood where I see the kids... Man, they're on their way to soccer practice at 6:30 in the morning. They're on their way to dance lessons. They're on their way to, I see these kids come home 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and they look like I feel when I'm done with work. There's not a spring in their step. They're not happy. They've been run all day. And then we have other kids in my neighborhood. Guess what they do from dawn to dark? They're on a skateboard, a bike, with a football, and I see the difference. And I'm not saying I got it all dialed in, but what is happiness and success to y'all?
That's.
I know what it is to me, and it's not $10 million and a whole bunch of stuff to manage.
Yeah.
I just want a little bit of freedom.
That's the perfect segue too, because what I was just gonna say is that my parenting focus now is wrapped around trying to help my children be as unconditional as they possibly can. Because what you just described happens if you're raised with the conditions and you accept them for what they are, just the conditions. What happens is through these conditions, whether you accept them from your religious leaders or from your local government or from other pieces of your family, wherever those things come from, what happens is they start to build this template that we talked about a little bit earlier.
Oh, absolutely.
This is what a perfect, happy life looks like. Look, this is for you. And the child gets that, and they start trying to live into that.
Build it.
The problem is the only person that has the right or should be making this template for you is yourself. This template, I didn't realize this until later in life, but I realized that every decision I made, every action that I had taken in my life was to appease either what I believed religiously or what I thought was right for government or what I didn't want to muddy waters with my family or something like that. But I didn't actually make my own template until later in life. You know what I mean? So I want my kids to make their own template. I want my kids to decide what a perfect existence is for them, what their heaven looks like.
Yes, who
I
are
want
you?
my kids to be free to discover what makes them truly happy, instead of somebody else giving them the answers to questions they have no reason to be giving them. So that's mainly what I wanted to get across today, is just that, look, as we try to be more and more unconditional ourselves, let's try to see what that looks like from a younger age by allowing our children to be unconditional. You know, I'm not saying, like you said, ignore them, but what I'm saying is you need to trust your children more and make sure they're safe, make sure they're healthy, make sure they're taken care of. Give them all the love and support that you can as a parent. That's your responsibility. But at the same time, you have to be able to let your children dictate what's going to make them happy as we continue to live in this life. Being unconditional is the most important thing in my life right now. And I want to transmit that to as many people as I can because it's incredibly freeing. It's incredibly rewarding. Even if the things around you in your life aren't going as perfect as you like, if you're unconditional with your life, everything about that is different. You see it differently. I want my kids to be as unconditional as possible. And I want them to understand that they make the rules for their happiness. And I just want to be as supportive as I can while I'm being an unconditional parent.
I remember just in closing something my grandma used to tell me. She used to tell me over and over again, Johnny, be you. Everybody else is already taken.
I like that.
And I see so often, even in my own parenting, how my fear manipulated my children to be little versions of what I thought they needed to be, what would be best for them, what would be, instead of just allowing. And you know what? My kids have turned out pretty damn good. They're good kids, in spite of all the mistakes that I thought I made, in spite of all the things I thought I did wrong. And I think that I truly believe that Grandma was right. It's time to just be you. I remember we talked about this in a podcast. Your dad reminded me of this. We don't own our kids. You only own you. And if you do you the best way you know how, I guarantee your kids will do them the best way they know how because of your example. Not because of the words that you said to them, but because of the way you lived your life.
Yeah.
And that's my goal. My goal is to live my life in a way that I see my kids mirroring happiness and success in a way that works for them, that brings them joy and peace in their life, without shame, without fear, and without doubt. That's it for me. That's my perspective for me.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Love you.
Appreciate you.